Okay, this is super random, but I'm literally using a Vaseline thing and my old psychology textbook just to hold up as a stand because I don't have a stand. So the topic of today's video, if you haven't realized by the title, is that environments that you're in can make or break you. And this is pretty obvious, but a lot of people don't understand this. They think that they need to manage the people that are in that environment. They think they need to change themselves. They think that it's something to do with their coping mechanism that they need to fix, that they need a healthier mindset. But if you really think about it, environments, they have associations. And then slowly with time, with the behaviors you do, with certain triggers. For example, what does that mean? For a story that or an experience that I have had, is that I would binge eat a lot, like stress eat, do it as a form of self-sabotage, self-destruction, a lot of these things. And I would get triggered every time I saw something that reminded me of this state of binge eating. So for me, it was the pantry. It was this kind of like, not like a stool, but a little like stepping stool thing that was in there because there's shelves up there that we kind of need to get. And I would literally sit in there and just eat in the pantry. Really, it was terrible. I'd eat like boxes of cereals. So anytime I saw that stool in there, I would almost automatically just like sit on it and then start like taking boxes of cereal and eating out of it. Then what I did was that I removed that stool. It's in the basement right now. And then when's the last time that I ever really spent like 20 to 30 minutes eating in the pantry? It's been ages. I don't remember the last time. So when someone tells you that, okay, well, you just need to communicate with someone, you need to resolve the problem, at some point in your life or in that period of relationship, you have to understand that some things, no matter how much you do, you need to get away from that environment, whether it's the house that you live in, whether it's just a relationship that you have, a friendship that you have, or family members that you're in contact with. Sometimes going no contact is the best solution. And I know people are like, well, no, like you only have one sibling, or you only have one parent, that's only going to be your mom, or things like that. No. If that is for your own good, and you know that you will achieve your goals and that you will be a much healthier, thriving individual who's successful, who can get all the things they want in life, if you do decide to go no contact, or if you do decide to leave that partner or leave that friend, do it. I promise you that is going to be the best choice that you will make because you live for yourself. Another point I'd like to make is this whole irony between people who live in toxic environments with their family, for example, or with an abusive partner, or that's the second example. So one example, one side would be you're in a toxic family environment and you're like, well, I want to move out. I might go no contact with my parents. That's one thing. The next example is when someone's in an abusive relationship, domestic violence, emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse. But yet when it's the first example, people are like, well, no, you just need to communicate. Well, you only have one mom. Like, you gotta have her in your life. And you need to just cope better with the stress that they're causing on you. Yet when it's the latter example, wait, of course you need to get out of that relationship. You cannot have that person in your life. What a huge difference that is, don't you think? Isn't that so ironic? A lot of the times, environment is gonna dictate. It doesn't necessarily dictate, but it will highly influence you into doing things that you don't like. For example, if you're in a house that reminds you of the trauma that you've been through, that reminds you of the low self-worth that you had a few years ago, that reminds you of all the mental pain that you went through, whether it was depression, anxiety, all of these problems that will hold you back, that will cause this subconscious self-sabotage, that will end up delaying your success, that will end up delaying the person that you want to be, the partners that you want to attract that are actually healthy, also successful, and good for you. And what I mean by good for you, when you're attracting not just a partner, but overall people in your life, this means that you need to match their level. You know, I have this one friend where he was very insecure, and it's not the most recent friend I had, so I know he watches my videos sometimes, I think. It's not you, it's someone else, a few years ago, and he was very insecure. He would say things like, my white shoes are brighter than my future. I'm like, how can you possibly have that mindset? I don't want to be around people who have such a low mindset like that. And so I started to grow. I started to get better, but did I have a ton of problems and a ton of downfalls right after that friendship ended? A ton. Like, I don't want to go too much into detail, but boy, was it a mess. The past 2 to 3 years have been an absolute disaster. And hence why I decided to start this online coaching. That's besides the point, I digress. And having this friend who had such a negative mindset. It was terrible. He would go drinking on the weekends, go partying, smoking weed. Well, he did stop. But to me, sure, we all have our own vices. Okay, that's fair. I'm not one to judge, but that's not at all the type of person that I want to be like. That's not the type of person that I want to be around, because we get highly influenced by environments and people around us. And so when you're attracting these so-called toxic people or people you just don't want to be influenced by, you need to cut them out of your life. Number one, it's either you automatically or intentionally, consciously make that choice. Or what can also happen, one of two ways, did I stick my middle finger? Sorry. One of two ways is that number one, you subconsciously get dragged back to them and anchor yourself to people that you don't want to be anchored to. That was me for a bit of the moment. I started to let my grades slip. I started to spend way too much time with this friend, overthinking and doing all these terrible things. I almost lost who I was as a person. It's either that or number two, which also happened, because I ended up ending that friendship. The second way is that subconsciously, you will rise up to maybe a higher level or a different path. And by that, I mean your habits, your actions, your thought processes will end up different to the other person that you're in a relationship, platonic or romantic with. And that naturally ends friendships. And that's what we call people drifting apart. Right? You really do drift apart. It's not like, I don't want to be with you anymore, or I'm done being friends with you. It kind of just naturally happens for some of the times. And with that being said, that really does help your growth a ton, being around the right person. I remember this other example, someone that I knew, we went to the convenience store together, and this person was like, what should I get? What should I buy? And this person bought snacks, some chips. And then I felt compelled to also buy a bag of chips. I normally wouldn't have wanted to go in that convenience store to buy snacks, but since that person did, I kind of tagged along. And you see how small actions like that can really affect how you behave. So not only do you get physically triggered by cues in the environment, with conditioning, as in, for example, people who are in these environments that have conditioned them to behave in a certain way when they see a certain object, or even a person, or a smell, or something that they're touching. Bring back to my binge eating example. When I saw that stool, that stepping stool, it reminded me of the fact that I would sometimes sit there in the pantry, the stool would be in the pantry, and I would just eat and eat all the snacks in the pantry while sitting there. But now since that stool is gone, I mean, number one, there's no place to sit, but number two, you take that cue out of the environment. This conditioning happens when you repeat a behavior that is associated with a cue, and you do that over and over again, especially when there's a reward paired with it. So we would call that operant conditioning is what we'd call it. If you pair it with a reward or even a punishment, and then it affects the way you voluntarily behave. I say voluntarily in quotation marks because some of the times it doesn't always feel like that. You're doing things such in a subconscious, habitual manner. That is what conditioning ends up making or causing you to behave in that manner. So environment is very important. So be aware, stay safe, stay conscious about who you're with. So thanks for watching. If you haven't, please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me a lot, and I'll show up on your feed more if that's what you want. DM me on Instagram, the word connect, CONNECT, to do one-on-one coaching with me to help you develop deeper and healthier relationships. Or you can also just click the link in the description below, and see you in the next video.